Today we are studying the second part of the chapter on infrastructure for class 12. Now in infrastructure, in part 1, we did what is the importance of infrastructure and the different kinds of infrastructure, that is economic infrastructure and social infrastructure. And when we talk about economic infrastructure, we talk about power, energy, transport and communication. And when we talk about the social infrastructure, we talk about education and health. Now, first, let us look at the state of rural infrastructure in India. If we look at it, we find there are certain points, and that is first thing is a majority of our people live in rural areas. Despite technical progress, we see there is a lot of technical progress in India, but still the rural women are still using biofuels such as crop residues, dung and fuel wood to meet their energy requirement. Now recently with the Ujjwala Yojana, there has been a change and LPG gas cylinders are being given to the poor people in the rural areas. They walk long distances to fetch fuel, water and other basic needs. The problem of fuel and pure drinking water continues to be a problem in rural India. They have electricity connections. In the recent years, the number of electricity connections have increased and the people using kerosene, etc. has decreased. But still around 85% of the rural household use biofuels for cooking. Now, this is information of 2011. This has reduced to around 65% in rural household due to the Ujjwala Yojana. Then tap water availability is limited to only 31% rural household. Safe drinking water is not available. 69% of the population drink water from open sources, wells, tanks, ponds, lakes, rivers, canals, etc. Now, this is one of the basic reasons why we have so many communicable deaths. The communicable diseases which are communicated through water are maximum in India. It is because of these open water sources. Assess to improve sanitation in rural area was only 30%. When we were talking about the infrastructure, we said that there are infrastructure does not only mean transport communication, it means safe drinking water, better sanitation facilities. So this is the situation of rural infrastructure in India. Now, when we talk about the infrastructure, what we require, what actually do we require infrastructure? We require energy, we require transport, railways, then roadways, waterways, etc. These are some of the requirements which we have for the infrastructure sector. Now, what happens is, what is the adequate infrastructure? If the country is not very economically developed, whatever basic infrastructures like irrigation, transport, and power are sufficient. But as the country starts growing, as the income of the people starts rising, the composition of infrastructure requirement changes. Now, if you look at it, you look at a poor a person in rural area who has little electricity supplied available to him, say for 10 to 12 hours at night, electricity is there. How much is their requirement of electricity? But when you compare it to the urban areas, the metros, you find that everything runs on electricity. So automatically the composition of a requirement of electricity increases. So this is a very important point. As the economies grow, the economies, they mature, the basic consumption demands are met, the share of agriculture in the economy shrinks and more service related infrastructure is required. टर्शरी सेक्टर की ज्यादा रिक्वायरमेंट होने लग जाती है, तो जो टर्शरी सेक्टर में चीजें आती हैं उसकी कंजम्पशन बढ़ जाती है. दिस इज व्हाई द शेयर ऑफ पावर एंड टेलीकम्युनिकेशन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इज ग्रेटर इन हायर इनकम कंट्रीज. When we talk about energy infrastructure, let us study what is energy infrastructure. Now, energy is very important. It is critical for the development process of a nation. Now, energy here means power. Energy is required for industries. You cannot have production, you can have factories, but if there's no electricity, energy or power, production cannot take place. Similarly, for large scale in agriculture, production, transportation of fertilizers, pesticides, etc., everywhere electricity is required. It is even required in household for cooking, lighting, heating, etc. What are the different sources of energy? If you look at it, we have different sources of energy: fuel, gas energy, nuclear energy, solar energy, fusion energy, wind energy, coal energy, and oil energy. All these energy sources we have done in lower classes. We briefly divide all the sources of energy into two categories: the conventional sources and the non-conventional sources. Conventional sources are those sources which are being used. This has commercial as well as non-commercial. Commercial includes coal, petroleum, electricity, whereas non-commercial includes firewood, straw, and dried dung. Non-conventional are the sources which we do not actually use, but there is a potential for them, like bioenergy, solar energy, wind energy, tidal energy, and energy from urban waste. What are conventional sources? These are the sources which have been used since early times. They are exhaustible. Except hydro energy, they cause pollution because when they burn, they emit smoke and ashes. Their generation and use involves huge expenditure, very expensive, and they are carried over long distances through transmission grids. This includes coal, natural gas, water, and firewood. The non-conventional sources are which have generally been identified in the recent past, inexhaustible. They are pollution-free, low expenditure, less expensive due to local use and easy maintenance, like geothermal energy, solar energy, wind energy, tidal energy, and nuclear energy. Now, in case of India, for conventional sources, we know because these are exhaustible in nature, they are going to finish very quickly. But what about the non-conventional sources of energy? Solar energy, wind energy. Solar energy is the energy you get from the sun. Wind energy is the wind which causes energy. Tidal energy is the energy in water, in sea when you have tides. The energy produced, firewood energy, and cow dung energy. Now, in India, it is a tropical country, and there's unlimited potential for solar energy, wind energy, and tidal energy. There is a huge potential, but appropriate cost-effective techniques are needed, and cheaper technologies can be developed. If we recollect that in our school, we are having solar energy. All our electric points are being run by the solar energy. The commercial energy is the energy that are available to the users at some price. Non-commercial are generally free of cost. The commercial energy is used for commercial purposes like coal, petroleum, natural gas, and the non-commercial energy is like firewood, agricultural waste, etc. The consumption pattern of commercial energy. How do we use the commercial pattern? How do we use the energy? Now, the consumption pattern of commercial energy is of two kinds. It's studied on the basis of how much is the fuel-based consumption and what is the sector-wise consumption. Now, fuel-based consumption of commercial energy, 74% of the energy which we are using in India is commercial energy, which includes coal, lignite, 74%, with natural gas and hydro energy and other renewable energy. Now, the problem is that these are exhaustible in nature. The non-commercial energy consists of firewood, cow dung, agricultural waste. The critical feature of India's energy sector and its linkages to the economy is the import dependence on crude and petroleum products. We are more dependent upon petroleum products, and which petroleum products we are importing throughout. Now, if we look at the sector-wise consumption, what is happening is that in 1953-54, around 44% of the consumption was from transport and 40% from industries. In 1780, transport is 1%, 42% is for industries. This shows the shift. Now let us study in detail the power sector in India. Why is power so important? It is the most visible form of energy, which is often identified with progress in modern civilization. Power is commonly called as electricity. Electricity, you cannot think of your life without electricity even for one single day. It is a critical component of infrastructure that determines the economic development of a country. Electricity supply इतना ज़्यादा है, आपने political parties के उसमें देखा होगा, electricity कितनी supply कर रही है, 24-hour electricity supply. That is something which they are saying that is the work which they have done. The growth rate of demand for power is generally higher than the GDP growth rate. Studies point out that in order to have 8% GDP growth per annum, power supply needs to grow around 12% annually. Now, GDP, if you want to increase the GDP, that is the gross domestic product, you need to increase your production. And to increase production, you need electricity. So the increase in electricity needs to be more than the increase in your GDP. If we represent the same thing by means of a pie chart, this is the data which has been given in 2016, and it is mentioned that around 82% of the electricity generated in India is the thermal energy. Then you have 8.5% as the hydroelectric, 2.5% is nuclear, and 7% is the new and renewable energy sources. The thermal sources accounted for 82% of the power generation, 8.5% is the hydro, and 2.5% is the nuclear power plant. The three alternative energy sources, that is solar, hydro, and wind energy, are also very important. Atomic energy is an important source of electric power. It has economic advantages, but in India, it accounts only for 2.5% of the total energy consumption. This is far too low. So some of the scholars say that you need to have more atomic power plants to generate energy. Now, what are the problems in the power sector? Why are we not able to develop our power sector as required? The main problems which we see are there's inadequate installed capacity. The limit to which a power plant can work, that is low in India. India is able to add only 20,000 megawatts a year. The installed capacity is underutilized because the plants are not properly run. Then secondly, the state electricity boards are always running into losses in the distribution of electricity. This is due to transmission and distribution losses, wrong pricing of electricity, and other inefficiencies. The distribution of electricity to farmers is the main reason for the losses because subsidy is given there. Then lack of private sector participation. Previously, the private sector was not ready to play in the power sector, but after 2004, 2005, now in Delhi, you have two private players. The public unrest due to high power tariff, prolonged power cuts. Now, if there are no power cuts, people are ready to pay more. But the problem in India is that there are frequent power cuts, so their people are not happy regarding the high rate of electricity charges, so there is unrest. Insufficient raw material. Thermal power plants, which are facing shortages of raw materials and coal supply. Thus, continued economic development and population growth are driving the demand for energy faster than what India is actually producing. Then the question is, according to the report of the World Bank, how much do power sector distortions cost in India? It is 80th among 137 economies in the reliability of electricity supply. How much do power sector need in India? That shows that how much is the loss in case of India in electricity generation. So what is needed to do in the power sector? It is very important that more public investment, number one, better R&D efforts, technological innovations, use of alternative energy sources can ensure additional supply of electricity. Now, it is found that the Delhi State Electricity Board was set up in 1951. This was succeeded by DESU, then later by DVB, and now you have two companies, Delhi Electricity Regulatory Commission, which shows satisfactory result. Another way of increasing the efficiency of power sector is to use CFLs. compact fluorescent lamps, and LED bulbs. According to the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, CFLs and LED bulbs, they require less energy, so they should be used. That would be better. They should be used. So this is the reason why when you leave your classrooms, it is very important. We tell you that you should you should switch off all the lights before leaving the classroom or before leaving your room, because as it is, electricity is very, very important and there should be no wastage of resources.